Hello, everyone. We welcome to Thursday, where we do our live stream happy hour called Everything Under the Sun. In this hour, we are a bunch of astrologers, and I guess just anyone who wants to join us. But we talk about anything and everything. Today we're welcoming some new people here. Magdalena, where do you hail from, and how long have you been studying astrology?
I'm in Northern California, and I've been studying on and off for several years, but most intensely since 2018.
Nice. And Sam, how long? What's your relationship with astrology, and where are you?
I'm Jenna's husband. I'm in Maine. So by proxy, I've kind of been around it for a while. My career is I'm an intuitive body worker. So I work directly with the physical body and kind of flowing through that, I guess is the easiest way to say it. And I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. So I help other people learn how to use their bodies as well in more of a proprioceptive way.
Nice. I absolutely love proprioception. I feel like it's a very Pisces thing. It's like the very scientific way to say like we feel our aura around us.
Yes, it's a flow. It's always a flow. You're learning how to tap into that energy.
Yeah. Oh no, Beth Wishman's here, but we're limited to 6 people. Please remove someone before adding or upgrade if we need more. Oh no. We would have to upgrade. Oh gosh. Well, now we know that we're gonna have to upgrade because there's more people who want to get in here. So anyway, sorry, Beth Wishman. How do I let her know? Okay, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I gotta go talk to Beth Wishman for a second.
I should tell my friend too, because my friend Kimber was gonna come. She's a evolutionary plus traditional astrologer. I was like, you'll be great with everyone.
Well, I'm gonna what? Sorry. I'm gonna tell Beth to come in the chat. Beth. Hey Beth. Looks like we cap out at 6 people in the room. Can you join us in the chat? How's that? Okay, all right. All right. Sorry, you guys, this is a learning process. We're on a learning curve, and Kimber's here too. I can see her, but see if she can join us in the chat, maybe. All right. Sorry about that. We'll work on that. We'll work on getting more in the room. Okay, so let's tell them it's live on YouTube. Kadri says, okay, so it's live on YouTube, and you can go in there and join us in the chat. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, so
Popular.
Well, the Moira Press is actually a place. Like people always think it's me, but it's actually a big team of us. There's like a bunch of us, so it's actually a school and a place. It's not me, so it's bigger than it looks. Okay, so all right, let's talk about sovereignty, which was Jenna's first idea here. So, what is sovereignty? And let's start by defining sovereignty. What is it? Or Jenna, do you want to talk about why you had that idea?
I had that idea because I've been doing some work with a few different goddesses, and Maeve, who isn't technically a goddess, she's a queen. And sovereignty keeps coming up in a lot of my meditations and a lot of my prayer work. And I was like, you know what? Now that I can finally spell it, it'd be great to have like a deeper understanding of what it really is. So I thought I'd bring it here.
Nice. Sam, I have to know if you think Jenna's talking to all the gods is kooky or not.
Not really, no. I mean, I've always, I guess, been spiritual in that regard, but her level of engagement, of hunting for it is where it starts to worry me, and where I told her to pump the brakes. I tell her to listen more and seek less.
Whoa, interesting.
Ooh, that's like that thing that people keep telling me. I think Andy, you mentioned it, or our Course in Miracles group, that prayer is you talking to God and meditation is you listening.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true, Sam.
I would definitely think so, yeah. Stillness is your only time to actually start to receive any level of message. You know what I mean? Whether it's like you're held in a moment or you open a moment up to be one that you're receiving something.
Oh, interesting. You know what's weird is that is our Course in Miracles. So we do have this Course in Miracles group that we do on Sundays. And literally our lesson for this week is In quiet, I receive God's word today.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, I think this, we can speak a lot about this in the second part where we talk about mental illness versus spirituality, of like, does it make Jenna like mentally unsound to talk to the gods? I mean, that would be a really good. No, Jenna, I'm on the schizophrenia spectrum. I'm on meds for schizophrenia, and I'm also a psychic, so I'm totally down for that conversation. Like, I'm not like pigeonholing you. Like, I'm there with you. But let's talk about sovereignty first, though, which is okay. I'm looking it up, and it says sovereignty is a supreme power or authority, or the authority of a state to govern itself or another state, or a self-governing state. So, individual sovereignty would be the state of one governing oneself.
I think so. Yeah, I had to look it up too. And I've only heard that word when you're talking about nations who do not want to be under any other country's authoritative, stuff. So they basically want to have it's weird. It's like you have this authoritativeness through your freedom.
Well,
it's like,
yeah. It's originally a political theory in the sense that if we use the United States as an example, the states have a certain sovereign right to govern their own affairs, but the federal government also has a sovereign right to overarch on the states. But then working with other nations, I mean, right now we think of our world as nations and ruling ourselves. But when it applies to the stars or gods and goddesses, it's interesting because there's still some overlap, just like there are between nations and states and those kinds of concepts. So when we're talking about the sovereignty of a goddess or a god, I had never really thought of it in terms of prayer. I mean, the word sovereignty in terms of prayer. So maybe that's something that we can kind of pick up on here.
I also looked up, I was very interested to see what astrological signs would be associated with sovereignty, right? So basically, I'd rather think of it as more of the higher vibration signs, like Capricorn and Aquarius really come to my mind with that, because especially Aquarius, because that is like, because you're in charge of your own way of thinking and your belief systems and everything, and you're with a group of people with the same thing, but you're free.
Right.
And so I think of Aquarius as a really great choice for that. They were talking about maybe Aries and Leo, but those are more about, that's really about more of like when you don't have that freedom, because Aries and Leo people want to be in the spotlight. They want to be in charge. They want to be, directors. But I think sovereignty has nothing to do with that. I think it has to do with the freedom based on the authoritative grouping of saying this is our group.
Because otherwise you're king of a country of one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
How do sovereignty and agency correlate? Like when a person has a lot of agency, does that mean they're sovereign of themselves?
Great question.
Yeah.
I think that there's something to that, because the way that I relate to sovereignty is through one of my jobs, which is in wildfire mitigation, and we're working with tribes. And one of the big things that comes up is they can't just make rules. We can't just make agreements with each and every one of them, because they're acting as a government. They have their own form of government. So govern, when I hear the word govern, when I hear the word sovereign, I am governing myself. I am recognizing my government. It's not about just now I can do anything that I want, but that I do recognize that my actions, my wants, beliefs, whatever, um, are kind of a foundation for how I will make a choice, or how I will relate to other people, or how I will relate to my environment. Um, so that's where I'd go.
Well, sovereignty is an abstract concept. Part of the reason that we're like kind of stumped on talking about it is like sovereignty. The word means the state of being sovereign. So if we actually discuss sovereignty, that's a different concept than discussing like, is God sovereign over us, or are the gods sovereign over us, or are we sovereign over ourselves? Like that would be like, so sovereignty is like a very abstract concept. But like, okay, let's talk about that. Like, do we let the gods be sovereign over us when we talk to them?
It's an individual preference whether you want that or I'm that's just my opinion, that it could be an individual's right to want to have that higher power controlling you or being with you or guiding you, in
If
charge
it's
of you.
collaborative, would it like inherently not be sovereign then? Like if you give the power, if you're like, if it's in my highest and best interest, please help me to achieve whatever. Peace in
I
my
think
life.
it depends on it depends on your level of development. If you're just starting out, you need some other authority to kind of help guide your way.
Mm-hmm.
But because here we have this whole thing about, well, what's a god, what's a goddess, right? And who's doing the surrendering?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Okay. And so if you're just starting out, I mean, your parent is a god. They're sovereign over you, plain old. You can fight them, but they have certain powers and so forth to exert over you, and certain resources to bring you. And then you learn how to relate. Well, and then as you get older, you start to realize that this idea of power, authority, provision of resources, soliciting, begging, or there's different ways to ask. Again, depending on your level of maturity and how you actually understand that particular god or goddess.
So if you're trying to manipulate, like I'm just thinking, when you bend, like with parents, when you're like acting in a way to get your way and being manipulative, are you trying to basically take sovereignty away?
I think for a kid, they're trying to learn what their own sovereignty is. And that's because later on, that's when adolescence comes in, right? And you want to be the kid and you want to be the adult. You want to tell them what to do and let them give you the goods. But little kids do learn to be manipulative very early. Again, it depends on, we've got to look at the rest of the chart and see what did they bring with them? What are they just predisposed to exercise, and then how are they predisposed to react? So it's not in my understanding, it's not a give and take. At its highest, it would be a mutual sacrifice.
Well, I think it's also a power dynamic, right? And so maybe that gets back to the conversations with gods and goddesses and the co-sovereign. I like how you said that, Andy, in the chat. Like, because the other thing that I've heard before is that true communication is can only happen between peers, right? So only if you hold the same amount of power can you really communicate freely. Otherwise, you have to be manipulative to get your way if you don't have as much power, or you have to be persuasive to trick someone who has less power than you into thinking it was their idea. I mean, like, there are all sorts of communication tricks that we play to even the power dynamic.
What that guy Applewhite? Remember, he was that religious. He had a following of people believing that the aliens were going to come and save them all, and yeah, it was a cult, but he was in charge, but he made them. It's like, no, you are free to do whatever you want, and you could, but they believed in him, and they actually drank the Kool-Aid because they wanted to, to be saved, their souls to be saved. And that's a sovereignty in some way, sovereignty, because he was watching over them. He was, I'm not saying that's right, what he did. I'm not but what about those people who were following him?
Well, and that's what I wanted to say is like, okay, isn't the word even hard to say, sovereignty? But that there's a dom sub kind of thing going on where, like, Jay-Z's talking about the power dynamics, and I like that you're saying that only in an unequal power dynamic will sovereignty be at play, because if there's equal, then there's mutual sovereignty and both people have agency and all this kind of thing. But like if you're a sub to the God talking to you in your mind, that's kind of crazy making, because you're like, well, the voice told me to chop up my teddy bear, and it's like, well, you're a sub to the voice. Like, you don't have self-sovereignty in that case, and in that case you've been made crazy by this voice, right? But like, if you take on the agency and you have co-sovereignty with the voice of God or whatever, or something like that, like, I mean, I don't know. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on being you don't have to be an intellectual sub. You can be an intellectual alpha, or you can be an intellectual switch, I guess, or a receptive switch to the God concept talking to you. Like, I don't know. You could have co-sovereignty.
Like, you can consider yourself a peer to God, like, but you have a different perspective. So you ask your trusted advisor who has a different perspective for their advice from their vantage point. And that's why, that's why one person might say, like, God, what is, the best thing, the next best move for me in this situation, is not because I think, like, I don't know, but like, I want more inputs.
Yeah, I like the things that you're saying there, Jay-Z, because yes, if you're functioning from sovereignty, your own sovereignty, it's not it's actually an exercise of wisdom in its best sense. That you recognize that there is someone that has this resource, but you treat them, you can treat them like they're a parent and be all fawning or whatever, but that's your thing. If you were just recognizing that if we're co-equal, as some people are using words like that, as I was referring to earlier, mutual sacrifice, each one is giving something. There's an exchange of energy. The devotee of the God is submitting to the God, and the God also has an obligation to respond to the devotee.
Do you guys think that okay, let's go back to the signs equation. What signs tend to take sovereignty, like take control, basically? Or what signs are more like giving over of sovereignty?
Pisces. Sorry, Jay-Z.
No, I agree with that. I have a Pisces. Yeah. People always think I'm an alpha. I'm an alpha at the 28th degree, but my 14th degree is a beta. Like, like my Pisces moon is totally a beta. Sorry, Jersey.
Yeah, no, I would agree with the Pisces evaluation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leo, I feel like wants to be obeyed.
Mm-hmm.
Libras
Or at
can be
least-
like that too. Sorry, Andy, but Libras too, because
Yeah.
there's this, I don't know. I don't know. You tell us how that might work for a Libra.
Well, I feel like an Aries would take more control than a Libra. I feel like Libra is more acquiescing.
I think
Yeah.
Libra's control is more subtle. Like the idea of like, I'm not going to say what needs to be said in order to keep the peace. Like that's a power move, even if it's subtle.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sam, what is your sun, moon, and rising?
Taurus, Libra. I'm trying to think about it in the perspective of like I can be stubborn if I feel a wrongdoing, but also like the Libra aspects of me wants to find balance. Like I'm willing to play devil's advocate, even if I don't necessarily believe in the opposite side, just so all voices have the right to be heard. So I will be stubborn in inserting that point also, even if it doesn't follow my viewpoint. But it's like I'm always willing to die on a hill just so we explore all options, especially when talking in a collective. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of like a secondary leader in my gym, and then there's a hierarchy where we have a professor and I'm the coach, and then we have all the other people who are around. And people look to me, and I may look to the black belt, but then I come back to like tonight I'm running classes or that sort of thing. It's like you have to think about the community as a whole and the overall objective as a whole. So I find it necessary to play that devil advocate sometimes, even if it doesn't align with my goals or what I want. I find it's a tool that I'm always pulling from, is ability to try to step into others' shoes.
Interesting.
Yeah, Aries
So-
doesn't care whose shoes there are. Just follow his shoes.
So Kimber makes a comment and says a sub holds a lot of power. There's a lot of trust in giving someone your power to hold or share because you can take it back. You can't give power if you don't have any of your own. So that's interesting. Like by giving, could it be a power move to let someone else have the power? I mean,
Yeah, it is. I think it's the ultimate power move, actually.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's like letting the child win.
interesting.
Right. You're so confident of your own that
Yeah.
you can grant the power to someone else.
Maybe that's sovereignty then.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Powerful that you aren't threatened when others win or step up.
Well, okay, I feel like the biggest hackers do the sovereignty dance where they take and give sovereignty for the greatest good of all concerned so that they can get towards their goals. Like I think being an alpha all the time and being like I'm in control all the time, like it's actually not that wise, because like sometimes you shouldn't be in control because you don't know best or whatever. So I think dancing with sovereignty might be more of a wise choice for I don't know. What do you guys think about like the switching of sovereignty back and forth, or like in a household where maybe like one partner has sovereignty over certain things and another partner has sovereignty over certain things, and like what do we think of like shared sovereignty like that?
As long as the puzzle pieces fit in pretty good, that you can, that you're not if you're stomping on each other, then it loses all sovereignty then, it's weird. It's a weird, like you said, it's a concept. It's not like it's never really, I think, solid all the time. It's a philosophical point of view based on how do you explain that from a national point of view? Like if you were to talk about, and I'm not wanting to get into the politics of it, but when you think about what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, where's the sovereignty in either of those countries?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you think of absolute sovereignty, you have your king rules over everything. Everybody has to do what that person says. And then when he gets sick, is he going to argue with his doctor about the treatment? Well, the doctor's going to be really careful because, hopefully they're wanting to ensure that the sovereign lives forever. But from the sovereign's point of view, from the ruling king, is he giving away his power, or is he or she exercising part of what it means to be, they can't necessarily go and just disappear because they feel like it. They actually have to try and get themselves cured because they're the sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that gets to leadership now. And I think part of being a good leader is to trust your people, right?
Know when to delegate.
Yeah, because you cannot do everything yourself. The leader has to have, like, everybody has to be involved in doing the work of keeping the life things and environment running correctly. And unless the leader empowers and trusts their people, well, I mean, I guess there are different ways to lead, right? So
Sometimes the
would
most
micromanaging inherently mean you're not a sovereign leader because you need to have your hand in every basket to feel like you actually are in control?
you
yeah,
can't let anyone else shine.
one.
Yeah.
And some of that, what you're describing, I think, Jenna Marie, is a feeling. I mean, you can be called a sovereign because you've been installed in a position of status. But I think we're talking about that kind of personal sovereignty, which is that you have command of your resources, or you have command over your choices.
Yeah,
It's not
the word
it's not just
command.
reactive. Yeah, it's not just being
Yeah.
reactive.
Go ahead, Sam. What were you going to say?
The word command is what sticks out to me there. The ability and the want to exert control rather than give somebody independence to boost somebody up. Still knowing you're the leader, but handing over power to somebody else because you know they're better fit to succeed at the task. Like, I don't see somebody who wants to be the sovereign leader willing to give up that power, willing to let go of the reins at all, to let go of that control. Whereas like a truly efficient leader can see the power in others and see where they can shine and do better than themselves at a task.
I like that probiotic sovereignty I see in the chat there.
Well, I was just thinking, like, what if could we move towards? I mean, we're not going to solve sovereignty in this half an hour that we're giving it, right? But this is why it's such a great topic. But I do think there could be life-bringing states of sovereignty where people are taking on control, and it brings life to the whole collective. And then there can be kind of like malefic, ways of sovereignty where people are taking control, and it actually hurts the collective. So I think, I don't know, just a thought.
Well, to bring that back to the gods and goddesses that you talk to, Jenna, like, are some of them good leader characters and some of them bad leader characters? Do they each have their own personalities, much like, a human sovereign would have?
Yes, 100%. And it's funny because, like, Poseidon, very forceful, very direct, very demanding, whereas Asclepius is sovereign in his own right, but his energy is very gentle, like bedside manner, like very strikingly gentle, more than I would have expected of any god, just because of the word god, like implying power. And gentle going along with power, that was hard for me to reconcile. It all came from reading about Hera and her being presented as a sovereign, as queen of the gods, therefore she is sovereign. But then in talking it out with Kimber specifically, recognizing that, like, well, did she actually have sovereignty in her life? Like, Zeus was kind of always running the show with his own antics and his own infidelity. So why are we calling her the sovereign queen if, like, she's not really sovereign? I hate to say that. Like, I just got chills saying that. I don't want to just be disrespectful, but
Well, sovereignty
Well, she
is, I
was
guess
this.
it is like a wave. It's like a wave then.
Yeah.
It's not permanently, sovereign. It's like, yeah.
So maybe
Well, she was the queen of the gods, not and was responsible for certain things, and that's one of the reasons why her and Zeus had their fights all the time, because they were sovereigns and they were duking it out.
What I would gather is like, it sounds like then as we tiptoe around it, the definition would be, even if you're sovereign, you have the ability to give up control, but then call back control. It's the ability to then call it back to you. If you don't have the recall, you are not truly sovereign. If you are unable to regain that control, then you have given up your sovereignty at that point.
Mm.
And with the comment on the gods, like when are we listening to them? I relate towards like Norse mythology. Like many people build like altars to like Loki, but Loki isn't about what you can learn directly from his messages. It's what can you learn if you were actually going to enact those things, or what those temptations may derive, or what it may bring in your life. Like you can learn something from the consequences of those actions also. Or in Stoicism, like chapter 1 of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, those aren't lessons he was taught by people. It was lessons he learned by observing their mistakes or the things he admired about them. It wasn't necessarily positive or negative in any sort of connotation. It was just observations that he had and lessons that he assigned to people in his lives that he then kind of set forth in his own.
Would now be a good time to segue into the second question, since we're talking about talking to gods and goddesses. Jenna had another question, which I love, which is, how do we kind of juxtapose mental illness against spirituality? Because a lot of people are called mentally ill for doing very spiritual things. And so I think talking to gods and goddesses as if they're really talking to you one could label that a mental illness, right? Like schizophrenias are in that cluster. So what do we think about? How do we know mental illness versus spirituality?
What do you categorize mental illness as, if you had to give a definition personally? Just an open question. Because I see it as the deviation from normal. Other than that, you're not systemically categorizing it with any sort of like trace markers. Maybe you develop a test and you have 100 questions and you deviate through yes and no scales of 1 to 10, and then you eventually get a grade. But who's to say that you can definitively call someone mentally ill? Why isn't it just a temporary imbalance or something of the sort? Why does it become a permanent label?
Well, it's like, what does the word illness mean in that phrase, right? Ill is unhealthy, right? And so if being spiritual is healthy for a person, and then I wouldn't call that a mental illness. if they're in a situation where they're unhealthy because of their mental state, then that's a mental illness, right?
Yeah, I made a list of things like efficacy, like can you live, feed yourself, clothe yourself, brush your teeth, whatever, all these things. People being mad at you, like, is your spirituality making it hard for you to relate to people? Harmony versus discord. So, like if you have harmony with your spiritual life, then maybe that's not an illness. And are you suffering from your spirituality? I mean, that was a quick list I made before we hopped on here. So
I like the suffering, because my own answer was just distress. If your spiritual experience is borderline psychosis, but it's not causing you distress, then maybe it's not mental illness. But if it is causing you distress, even if it's just seeing the same number over and over again, and it's the most minor little synchronicity that I can think of right now, but it's causing you distress, then where do we draw the line?
If the starving artist mentally ill to give up a path to a normal life, to not invest in anything because they truly believe that them pursuing their art is going to be their path to independence, if they're willing to not be able to feed themselves, not know where they're going to sleep the next night because they're a musician, because they're a painter. In my world, I mean, martial artists and stuff like that will sleep in the gym in pursuant of trying to fight their way up in our food chain or ranking systems. Is that mentally ill? They're giving up their survivability when they could take a normal path towards getting a job, getting promotions, that sort of thing. Because it sounds like, again, they're risking a lot and not following what society would say is normal.
I have something to say about that. Okay, so it's interesting because you could equally say it's mentally ill to not follow your life path and purpose. Like one of the things about if you follow your chart, which whatever your purpose is, there's a word for it in Greek. It's called melatao, which is to train yourself for that which you have been made. And they say if you do that, you will be busy and zealous. So if you're built like an ultimate fighter and you train as a fighter, you will be busy and zealous, right? But it's funny because what's crazy making about this is that people are not taught about the 20-hour-a-week survival job. Like, so I was reading this book, Self-Management for Actors, and it was talking about how everyone thinks if you make it as an actor, it means you don't have a survival job. But actually, because acting is project-based work, as is fighting, you go fighting now and again for money or what have you. You actually need a 20-hour-a-week stable survival job to fill in the gaps between your project work. That's the only thing that separates the crazy martial artist or the crazy musician from the stable, sane one is, do you have a 20-hour-a-week stable job? Like, that's it, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're using the word stable too, because it is like mental illness, I think, is maybe also you could term it mental instability, right? And maybe this gets back to, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if you don't have your food, shelter, and whatever is on that base level situated, that will make anybody seem and act crazy, right? And if you do have that stability in that bottom pyramid level, then society lets you be eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so much of this is cultural and social, because you can have entire guilds or dojos, where yes, there's the martial artists that are doing all their thing, but their families they know that that's what they do, so they create these enclaves where they can live and not have to be hassled by anybody, and be given the time, not be looked at as silly. They'll have a whole temple, where everybody will go there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and everybody will do that instead of earning money, kind of thing. In India, I know that there are groups of people that they call masts, masts, and they appear, to be talking in the middle of the street, and people wonder but they're treated very well. Someone will come and give them some food because they feel that they're in contact with some kind of higher vision or understanding of something, and they need to be supported in that. It's another reason why certain people can take advantage of becoming a guru, because in those cultures you free that person to teach. The word guru actually means teacher. I'm Filipino, so the actual word for teacher is guru. You free your teacher to be able to impart the instructions by supporting them, their livelihood or whatever. So there's different ways of looking at it culturally too, that we kind of impose our version of what mental illness, how it should be done or how it should be treated.
That's a really good point, the cultural context.
God, you just got me going about sovereignty. I'm like, yeah, that's why you got to be a self-funded teacher so your students don't try to control you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you see that happen.
Yeah. Well,
and that's crazy thinking, because then you lose your sovereignty.
Oh, totally. Jenna, so if you talk about the spirits that you talk to in certain contexts, are you called crazy versus other contexts where you're allowed to do that and be not considered crazy?
100%, yes. Like I
Yeah.
surround myself with communities and people where it is very safe to talk about that stuff. So when I accidentally join the real world and say something, I am often very shocked at the reactions to what I consider very normal comments.
True with astrologers too. I mean,
Yep.
astrologers are, I come across people that go, "What is that?" They don't even know what it is, or this blew my mind. I was going to my hairdresser, and for the first time, and she goes, "Is that a white black thing?" I'm like, "What? What?" Or people ask you all the time, "What is that? What is astrology?" Or "I don't believe in astrology," or they look at you weird. I mean, I know people even that are in my family that think that I'm weird, because I'm doing, but I do believe I'm sane. I'm not, and I don't have any mental illnesses per se. But the thing is, again, I think Magdalena put it out there that it has a lot to do with the social, mind. What is the social grading at that point? Who's looking at you? What is the majority of people saying about astrology or about your gods or your gods and goddesses that you are worshiping, Jenna? It's like, I don't think that's fair. Because you're not a mentally ill person, and mental illness is a questionable about that. Even is a stigma to say you're mentally ill when you have some sort of whatever you have going on.
Yeah.
Listen, I was diagnosed in February, onset Alzheimer's. So, I'm not taking that as in fact, I'm not that I'm dismissing it. I'm not putting it under the rug, but I'm going to beat the crap out of that rug. That's all.
Well,
Debbie,
okay.
I was just going to ask Debbie, do you notice when the moon or certain transits happen that the Alzheimer's seems more?
Oh my God, this new moon is beating the crap out of me. The planetary lineup in this particular is like, it's like, it's jittery, now the sun's in Scorpio with the moon, and you got all these planets that are like, you got the Pluto making a square to that crap, and you got everything, and Jupiter's not really helping. It's just magnifying it all, and it's making you want to cry, and it's making, I need a hug like right now. And absolutely, but I do keep a track of that, and so, and I am, I'm looking at it from every possible way I can to fight it. Sometimes I have brain fog, I call it, brain hiccups or whatever, and I just keep moving. The thing is, mental illness is such a, like people just kind of like, ooh, mental illness, like, if you had a heart problem, nobody would be going, ooh. It's really weird. It's such.
Oh, I love how you have Alzheimer's, but your astrology is always spot on, and you always are coherent in the astrology realm. I'm like, about that Alzheimer's, like your astro stuff.
Well, and let me tell you, it takes me more time to really focus, and I have to write everything down, and I have to really, because again, my Mercury in Virgo really comes to my helps me out, because it really is, like, get this right. It's okay. But I'm just doing it in a more calmer way. Less anxiety I have, then the better I am. Then when we have these transits, it's like, oh crap, I'm just going to sleep today. That's it. I'm going back to bed.
Well, I want to go back to Sam's point about a static label versus what astrologers know, which is cyclicalism. So we have to address that. Okay, you can call somebody Alzheimer's, but we, as astrologers, understand people as cyclical, fluctuating human beings. So that Alzheimer's, we could say you present Alzheimer's-like traits on certain transits in the cycle of your chart. Or Jenna Marie has this Grand Cross in mutables that goes from 9. It's like she manias on the gods. Like cyclically, and it's like, so we could say she has cyclical states of psychic divine inspiration, which can be called psychosis, whatever. But if we don't add cyclicalism in there, we're actually not doing our job as astrologers. And these static labels are just, they're like a tiny little speck of dust compared to what we see. I don't know. Does anyone, what do you guys think of that?
I just simply go back to like my basis is like, what do you actually let define you? Like whether it's cyclical or not, like are you always going to allow yourself to continue to flow, to continue to grow, continue to seek something new, or are you going to put yourself in the box that you hear from other people? Are you going to let those be the four walls that surround you, the labels that are put on you by others, whether it's your parents growing up, your teachers in school, your bosses in your employment? Like, are you going to let them define you, or are you going to just go day by day and be who you feel you should be?
I got to answer that. You know what? When you are like traumatized in your childhood, that takes a long time to get over. You become sovereign, and then you can dismiss that stuff, and you could see things in a different light. You know, nobody's going to be hurting me now with whatever label they have for me, because you've learned that lesson. You become sovereign, and then you're in control of yourself. You are, you're in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had this big fight where they called me schizophrenic. Now I have a moon in Pisces square Neptune that does it. It worked as a psychic for many years, and it's like they called me schizophrenic, and they wanted me to sit around and stop working so they could take care of me financially. And they're trying to take away my sovereignty because of my intellectual specialties, I guess you could say. Well, I finally took back all my sovereignty, just went back to work. I was like, no thanks on the schizophrenia. And then the one day I was like, by the way, you're all Munchhausers and I'm not schizophrenic. I took back sovereignty by you're Munchhausers, actually.
I love it.
Now I'm like definitely like back to sovereignty, where it's like, all right, whatever. But yeah, I think sovereignty comes in with mental illness and oppression. Like we can start oppressing Jenna. We could be like, you're actually schizophrenic. These gods are not real. You're schizophrenic, blah, blah, blah. And start doing this oppressive factor with labeling, which takes away her sovereignty, which is crazy making.
Yeah.
Right. Which in itself is crazy making. Yeah.
Because it's one person trying to define another. You don't fit in my figure of what you should be. So like you aren't that person. Just like Andrea, like to me, talking about schizophrenia, it's like, are you just more rapidly cycling through different feelings, through different emotions, through different experiences, in ways that you're now, again, cyclical? Are you just revolving around something that you're now taking on different energies and kind of flowing more freely through it? It's not necessarily you are lost. You are a wheel that's kind of being spun until you find what's going to best work for you in a situation, like kind of like a selector. I don't see it as an issue. I see it as like opportunities for growth.
Yeah, and like we don't need to take my case and then go into it, but it's just like I was fine with that diagnosis, because I'm like, yeah, I do hallucinate. I see things that you don't see. That's fine. I'm fine with the schizophrenia idea. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, I fight oppression by people who label people with static things. Like, you are this, now I get to oppress you. Like, that's just
Right.
that's the fight. I love how Jenny, you juxtapose sovereignty with this question of mental illness, because they seem to go together. Like Debbie D have people trying to take your sovereignty with the Alzheimer's label.
Yeah. Well, I just, I don't really talk about it that much. I mean, in fact, this is probably the first time I've ever really opened up on a public, way to talk about it. But it doesn't bother me anymore. It is, and not for anything. People who hallucinate are sometimes the best artists in the world. You have visions that nobody else can. And there are, people could put you down as much as that they want to, because of, it's like, but I think that's human nature. We have to learn how to, unless you haven't, there's a lot of people, I think that they're have much more illnesses if they have not experienced those spectrums in life that teach you different things. I mean, I'm not saying that, I voted for, I want to have Alzheimer's, put it on, but that's not the point. The point is that we are all different, and we all have things that maybe have not yet been discovered, and that is weird. We're all different. We're all different. Why can't we accept that? Why can't we accept, and why do we have to label everything?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it goes to the way that we need to create mental models or mental maps of the things that we see and experience in the world, so that like everything that comes, we have to save in our memory locations in our brain somehow by creating the synapses, right? So you can't have a map that's like one-to-one, right? You have to delete things, you have to classify things, you have to kind of build a mental model. And it seems that like we have to encourage other people to improve their mental models by expanding the possibilities to include things like that people act cyclically, or that people talk to gods and goddesses or whatever. And that is, I think you alluded to it at the beginning, Sam. It's like, it's what is the person considered normal, right? And it's just that we need bigger, more expansive mental models and maps so that we can incorporate more possibilities.
You know, my therapist told me normal is just a switch on the washing machine. That's all it is.
All right, Magdalena, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to pick, I like what you just said, Debbie. Because I think it does relate to what I want to pick up on from what Sam said earlier and what JC just said now. Earlier, Sam gave a whole list of areas of life, employment and your schooling and all of that. And it occurred to me that those areas that you listed actually are fit with the houses on a chart, right? And each part of our being, whether it's the physical being, the mental, the emotional, that it has that those levels of learning have their own different timings. So the slowest is kinesthetic learning, the fastest is visual learning, emotion. Then there's emotional learning, right? They all have their different speeds. So it's just interesting to me that we're talking about cycling, and which implies time, which implies speed, which implies that when all of these different, as Andy likes to say, we're looking at a clock with 12 hands, and how those hands are relating to each other give us a symbolic way of accessing, well, what's happening now? Which level is coming more to the fore? Is it the mental, or is it maybe the emotional? I mean, I have only one water planet. So I don't have as easy access to knowing what I feel. And yet everyone has feelings, or everyone has the faculty of emotion, and might need support one way or the other to be able to access that, because it is part of being human. And it may not be time, depending on what else is going on in the chart. And so that chart just becomes a way of a mirror to mirrors were originally used for revelation, to know what you are, what is actually happening.
I love that with the mirrors, when we were talking earlier about like gurus and learning at the feet of teachers. And I was thinking of, and then when you grow into that position yourself, and I didn't bring it up then, but the whole idea of the inner gold transfer, giving your inner gold to a guru. Hey, hold this for me. It's something I value that you embody, and I'm going to learn from you. Okay, I have come to the point where I'm ready to hold my gold and take it back and sit level with you. We understand we can have a partner like Libra and seventh house type relationship dynamics now. And the trickiness when the guru doesn't want their pupil to graduate when they're hoarding that gold, and they need those eyes on them. And I like this. The static that we were talking about before, like static diagnoses or static labels, and Jay-Z bringing in the fact that we need to sometimes break things apart and reorganize them. It reminds me of Maki Maki, the trans-Neptunian object, about systems consciousness and like understanding, pulling apart the system and reconstructing it to see if it can work in a different way, to understand more about it. Like it almost feels like that process offers us a different sort of mirror, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're as you evolve, you start to notice what can actually act as a mirror for you. You know, and it begins to have symbolic meaning then. For us, where somebody else, you know, this is just an eyeglass case. Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I like the relational mirrors too. I'm at a point where I can really appreciate when I get triggered by other people, especially strangers, because it's completely not personal. And I'm like, oh, why is this? What is this a mirror for? What in me is unhealed and is activated right now that is like, this is an opportunity to address it. And like it within that, even within the not taking things personally, could you reach your sovereignty there too? Like it's all very tied.
And I feel inclined to say that, do you know that in the ancient texts they would say that when people have prominent planets in the ninth house, they are here to be a voice for a god or a goddess? Like it just might be that you're I think you have Uranus in the ninth, right? In a grand cross. Like from an astrological perspective, it would be crazy if you weren't talking to the gods. I mean, like, because then you wouldn't be doing your chart. I mean, that would be crazy.
I love that.
Yeah, Debbie.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly why I resonated with Aquarius as being the sign associated with sovereignty, because there is this higher level of knowledge, and it's also about knowing your tribe, so that you feel like you're sovereign, because you have that. It's not just about authoritative; it's about the freedom of within that. You know, being sovereign, that you are free to be able to be in charge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because you're free to be in charge when you have that kind of self-authority or authority over yourself. I'm thinking of, you know, we've been talking about gurus. I'm thinking of the process of becoming an authority over something that you actually know something about, your life experience, you know, information gathering, whatever. But you've lived through something, and that in itself gives a certain kind of authority, a certain kind of sovereignty. And it's a process. And, you know, I know there are many people who do not claim their sovereignty, and you want to shake them, you know, and you want to say, don't let people run over you. You're smarter than that, or you're, you know, you've got more to give than that. So it's all of that.
Yeah, I love how Debbie says you can have a tribe, because that's like a co-op sovereignty concept, but like a cult is like one person's in charge. You know what I mean? Like cult is like everyone gives their sovereignty to this one person. Like that's where it gets kind of creepy. Well, you guys, we're at 6:29. We're going to have to wrap it up. I'm sorry. This is such a good conversation. Do you all think we should upgrade and let more people in the room next week, or should I keep it at 6?
That's up to you, Andy. Yeah, I think it's your gig. What do you
Well, no,
want?
it's our gig. I mean, like Jenna's definitely a unofficial co-host, and Jay-Z is also a co-host. So, like, I don't know. I think we should maybe let more people in the room if they want to come in the room. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that seems
I
nice.
don't know.
Maybe
All right.
I'm fine with whatever, but I brought Sam and then Jensen and Kimber, and then my friend Andre was gonna come, but then he took his grandma for a walk.
I have a list of people who want to come. So
That's great.
I'll upgrade the room, and we'll just keep getting bigger. And then I guess if we have to pare it down, I guess we can. I don't know. The more, the merrier.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we won't know the limit until you go over the limit, right? So it's all an experiment, right? Like you can't keep just walking up to the edge and being like, I didn't fall off the cliff. You just got to go over the cliff and you see where the edge is.
All right, let's go over the cliff. Let's get as many people as we can. All right, thank you for coming, Sam. Thank you for coming, Magdalena. I will. Would you like me to hit you up next week as well? I'll put you on the list.
Sure.
Okay.
No, I can't. I can't next week. have
All right.
a
Well, I'm
meeting.
putting you on the list in general because you are
Okay.
so awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You too. Boy, you guys put me through paces.
I know. Yeah, this is some good topics, Jenna. All right. Well, thank you all. I will see you. We will see you next week. All right. Bye.
Thank you.